Our Splunk legal team requires we share the following. As you might expect, we'll be making forward-looking statements about our business and financial performance during the course of this presentation. Those statements are subject to risks and uncertainties that are described in our filings with the SEC. Please refer to the full text of the forward-looking statements slide for further information. We ask that you refrain from audio or video recording or rebroadcasting any of the content.
Hi, I'm Mano. I'm a security analyst slash engineer slash manager. I work in cybersecurity for nearly a decade, and I'm excited to give my first talk to you today, guys.
So before we start into our session, I would like to ask you a question. I would assume that most of you are working in security, and maybe most of you are analysts or working with analysts together or have a team with analysts. And if you think about your work on solving an incident, how many steps do you have in mind if you are solving an incident? 10? Okay, exercise after lunch. Everybody who has more than 10 incident steps during solving an incident gets up, stands up, please. No? Only less than 10 steps during solving an incident? Really?
Guess we're unique.
Unique incident steps? Okay, interesting. Maybe in Europe it's different than in the US, but yeah, we're going to talk about how we can automate those incident steps during solving an incident. And let's have a look on what we provided for you. For the next 30 minutes, you will get some information about how you can basically automate like a professional, even if you don't have basic understanding of how a SOAR tool works. Then we're going to talk about how we can modernize SOPs and how you use SOPs, standard operating procedures, and how to be more efficient in working with automation during an incident.
Yeah, a little bit about us. We are Raiffeisen Bank International. We are located in Austria. We are focusing on the Central and Eastern European countries, markets. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous. First talk, like I said. So we are focusing on Central and Eastern European markets and are active in also other countries as well. Could you, next slide? Our team is the Raiffeisen Cyber Defense Center. We provide security services for almost all of those units with, don't pin me down, but almost nearly 30 customers in those countries. Some of them fairly independent, some of them closer to us. So it's very challenging for us often, knowing the environment, knowing the customer.
By the way, the logo, I like your logo. If you recognize the logo with something else, maybe? Okay. You didn't steal it, it's just the logo you already
Yeah, it's okay. Completely original, no relations.
Okay. Yeah, I'm at Raiffeisen Bank in London. So we started a journey regarding SOAR and this topic in London during EBC. And the discussion we had was mainly related to some topics or challenges they had. So what kind of challenge did you have if you implement SOAR?
So yeah, like I said, we have a lot of customers, we have a lot of different IT systems, we have a lot of different business processes. Also, part of our Cyber Defense Center is outsourced to a service provider, so communication often gets a little tricky. The external service provider doesn't know us, doesn't know our customers. It's also hard for us sometimes to specifically know our units outside of Austria. And overall, it gets very confusing, very complex, very tricky sometimes.
So if you're talking about SOPs, this means you want to connect the external providers or MSPs to your internal staff, the internal team to the external provider.
Exactly. So when we talk about SOP in Raiffeisen, we have an external service provider who has certain techniques, practices they usually do that isn't always what we want, not always what our customer wants. So sometimes we have to get very specific with our SOPs, which can be a pain in the butt.
Whatever.
And we struggled with this quite a long time, actually since our beginning about 3 years ago.
Thank you much. So during this talk we had with Raiffeisen Bank, I remember the team lead of your team, Thomas. He's not with us today, but he came into the room and said, okay, automation initiative. And this is what he said. After 30 seconds, he left the room again, and this is the topic they need to solve within some certain time. So basically, it's about automation SOPs, implementing automation in general, and looking on other stuff regarding the security topics. So we divided this presentation into 3 chapters. Chapter number 1 would be how to intake or define SOPs at scale. And maybe Manuel, can you give us some hints or top information about these numbers you see?
So yeah, after a while, we looked at our SOPs in over 600 unique use cases that sometimes come from our team, sometimes come from our customers, they request, sometimes come from our external service provider, and then we have lots of different teams involved who want to have different stuff, basically, in their notable, in their case they receive. And when we sat down and counted what we have, we found over 2,000, let's call it uniquely phrased investigation steps, starting from just look up the file hash on VirusTotal to please detonate this file in a sandbox. And it was quite, let's say, not really streamlined. It was very confusing when the analyst sat down and tried to investigate the incident, put some enriching information down. It was just very slowing down when you implement a new use case. And what we found when we sat down, that all those 2,000 investigation steps for over 600 alerts, in reality, there were usually just around 60 really unique steps in about 6 categories. And we thought, why not summarize it, put it in an app, so the next analyst who writes an SOP doesn't have to think about how do I phrase it, what do I want, but actually just can click his SOP, his investigation path together, and we prepared a small demo for that.
So basically, we're going to show you a small video on how this takes place, how these SOPs can be created. So I would like to ask the technique guys to switch to the other device, please. I'm going to show video.
Okay. Yeah, so we basically just snapped together a small app in Power Apps of SharePoint, where we just, you can see, for us, it's important that each use case has a unique 4-digit identifier, where we basically cut together SOPs and other stuff, a description. And down left, you can see the categories we identified are important to us. So user investigation, host investigation for the file, and all the investigation steps we identified as unique. You just basically select, click your SOP together. Pretty straightforward. Should you find something, or should you have something in mind that you don't find here, it's also easy for us. Analyst shoots us over a Jira ticket, we implement it here, and we can also add additional steps. It's, I think, pretty self-explanatory, right? And also the benefits of this, if we can switch back to the slides. In the end, we export this, what we have written, in JSON, store it in our code repository. It's available across all systems. It's, instead of taking half an hour to think about what you want, you just click it together in about 5 minutes. And it's pretty easy to maintain. We also previously had the problem that reviewing every SOP once a year is not really something we want to do. So we can just go into the app, open it up, see if it's still applicable, close it, push it to Git, it's there. And pretty cool.
Basically, Manuel, regarding your challenge, also an MSP can click this thing together. Like, you can send a link to the MSP, they will create the SOP.
Yes,
the customer
everybody,
can create
everybody.
a SOP and you can create an SOP.
Exactly. And the SOPs look the same regardless of who wrote them or what they had in mind. It looks streamlined, it looks the same no matter the author, let's say.
Okay, so now we're working or jumping over to chapter 2 after we have created the SOP. And then we're going to have a look on workbooks. Those guys who already have or used our SOAR tool are maybe familiar with workbooks, or those that don't know what workbooks are, just a short explanation. But before we go there,
So yeah, we have the SOP now on Git. We can easily push it to SOAR. Andreas back then introduced me to this niche little feature in SOAR called workbooks.
I tried to explain what the feature is of SOAR, and they call it a niche. Okay, so after they have created this workbook as a JSON, basically stored on GitHub, we use the Git app in SOAR to import this from Git to Splunk, to SOAR. And basically a workbook contains of different kind of phases, and within the phase you have tasks. So either you can provide this to an analyst to have a guided work on an incident. So he starts from the beginning with phase number 1, goes through the task, and does whatever is described in this case. The other option is you could use also those workbooks, as we have seen, some kind of translation or mapping to an SOP. So what Raiffeisen Bank basically did is they used what they built in the tool before and added those SOP steps as a task to a workbook. And then you can basically automate this workbook also. We will see later. So there are basically 2 playbooks. Playbook number 1, and this is of course just an example, is to import the JSON from Git. And the second playbook is to assign it to a case. And we'll see later how this works. So now we're already on chapter number 3, automation investigation. So now, Manuel, what did you do?
We got the playbook from Git. We uploaded it to Phantom, SOAR, sorry. And why not automate the whole process? So for us, now the alert comes in. We, based on the unique identifier we saw before, we applied a corresponding SOP or workbook, and then we just let it run all through. No further manual labor from any analyst required. And also for that, we have as well prepared a small demo that if we can switch back.
Okay.
Andreas will show you.
Those of you who don't know what our SOAR tool looks like, this is the main web page. If you go into the main interface, sorry. And there you have different kind of connectors, a lot of connectors. And in this case, we used, for example, the Git app. It contains different kind of out-of-the-box actions, basically. And what we used is clone Git or get file or something like this to just clone the repository from Raiffeisen Bank into the SOAR tool. So what we also created is a custom list, because we need to map the SOP to the alert and do some kind of administrative task. So on the left-hand side, in the left column, you see the SOP, basically the workbook. In the second column, you see the version, because we want to update every time a change takes place in GitHub. We want to update the workbook within SOAR. And in the third column, you see the phase where we want to automate something, because this workbook also contains manual tasks for the analyst. And we want to automate certain tasks within a certain phase. And on the last column, you see the mapping to the alert itself. So if you go back to the part where the alert comes in, we have different kind of alerts here. It's quite small, right? Let me do it a little bit bigger. So you have different kind of alerts coming in. And if I click on this container, or it's still a container, I could basically trigger a playbook. And this playbook is the playbook that I've created, where I assign an SOP or workbook to this container. So selecting this playbook and running the playbook we'll now see on the left-hand side how the activity starts. We see that a workbook is assigned. And we can see basically, and that, I need to scroll down a little bit more, that different kind of tasks are already being solved automatically, and you can see a check mark on the left-hand side. In this case, only 4 playbooks went through, and from 6 tasks or 6 options what need to be automated. And in some cases, there might be a reason why it's not going to 6. Maybe the virus total or something else is not replying immediately, so you need to go in there and make it or tweak this a little bit more. Let's have a look on the playbook itself, what is using the automation. I get a bit bigger. So in this case, we basically use a playbook where we look for the identifier, so meaning the ID at the beginning of the alert. In this case, we had, for example, I'm just going to switch back to this one. It was like 9001 or 9002 or whatever. This we're going to capture. Then we're going to look if there's a mapping in the list, what I've showed you before. If there is a mapping to the list or to the alert, then we go further down the path, and we're going to look if it's already in progress. If it's already in progress, we're going to jump out of the process. If it's a new case, we're going to select or make some configuration. Basically, we'll automate the playbooks that are assigned to this certain task. And I'm going to look into this sub-playbook or input playbook. And within this input playbook, I just have one box. And those of you who are not addicted to code, but like code, it's a little bit code, and I made it not very beautiful. But in general is, we are looking for the ID, or we are using the ID of the alert, then we map it to the name of the playbook, and at the end, we trigger the corresponding playbook and start the automation within this process. So what we did is, instead of providing the analyst some kind of task, what he needs to do, and I'm going to go to the case itself, what I've just started. Let's take this one here. Instead of him clicking here, like selecting this one, assigning it to himself, reading the description, triggering something, we put all the steps into a playbook. And we use the SOP to automate this playbook to fulfill this task. The point is that you need to build this playbook in a way that everything is encapsulated in this playbook. So if you're analyzing, for example, a hash, the result, the formatting, everything takes place in this input playbook. The output would be a node that is, for example, in here. And then you can use this further on and also dig a little bit deeper in this. This functionality of importing a JSON as an SOP into SOAR, you can also use the same possibility using it with mission control. I just met one of my colleagues at the booth, and he told me he created already this kind of playbook. So either using it in the old-fashioned way with a workbook on SOAR itself, or a mission control, both options are possible, and it's basically the same procedure. So this was a short demo on how we automate the stuff. We can switch back to the presentation, please. Before we go for the next slides, are there any questions, maybe? Yeah.
Yeah, so what kind of data are you feeding into Splunk source data on this work? Do you have Splunk ES that's feeding notable to this, or do you have some other sources that you have that are feeding this?
Yeah,
Okay.
we currently receive only from Splunk Enterprise Security, notables, but should be possible with any other source you feed into this. But
I'm happy that he said this, because as Splunker, I'm not going to tell that you can ingest everything else, but in general, it's possible.
So to recap, it sounds like you have a Power App that you pick the alert and all the cool stuff that you want it to do, and it gives you this JSON file. And then you have this massive workbook of all workbooks that encapsulates every possible investigation technique. And then your alerts coming from ES, you have them labeled and this, this, and this, and that workbook parses and figures out what steps to do in what order? Is that
Exactly, exactly. So we currently still use it for like very basic steps, like basic enrichment, the stuff nobody wants to do really. But the plan for us is to use it maybe also for a little more complex stuff, like just spitballing here, assigning some risk scores to your container, and then if it's exceeding and it's an endpoint, isolate it, or whatever you can think of. But yeah, basically all investigation steps you will never bring in there, because like, why do you have analysts if you could automate everything, right? But yeah, so the boring stuff we want to get away. We want to just click it together, say, please do it for me, and just look at it and see if it's something or nothing faster.
I think one important point is maybe not the automation in general, and maybe not the SOP. The important point is that you give the possibility to everybody within the company or outside of the company to build this SOP in an app that is not related to SOAR in general. They don't need to log in to SOAR to create this automation. They will just use this app we showed you at the beginning. They will click their procedure together, and they can automate something. Think about an MSP and consultant. You don't want to give him access to your door. He just give you some kind of maybe description what to do. You will give it into your post, I don't know what it's called in English, but you put it in
Mailbox.
Mailbox, yes, thank you. And then you go to your mailbox, get this, okay, I need to do this, this, and this. He never gets access to your home, but he tells you what to do on options. So this is maybe the beautiful thing on this, what we just showed to you. Of course, SOAR is beautiful and it's really good, but yeah. Okay, we showed the demo. So as a summary, and we are quite fast.
Yeah, so how you saw, everybody can automate and it's faster. Your developer, your playbook developer, your use case developer doesn't need to sit there and write long SOPs for an hour or think, how do I automate it? It just clicks it together, it runs, you're not wasting time. And I personally have finally time to train for my half marathon. Let's see. You can follow me on my Adidas running app if you want to cheer on me and give me some motivation, but please, only if you're really interested, because... Pardon? Oof. Yeah, like right foot, left foot, something like this.
Okay, so we are basically at the end of our presentation. If you have any further questions, I'm happy to take them.
I have one not really related, but as you just said, regarding the emission control, I'm sure now I do not understand the difference between emission control and secure enterprise security working with SOAR. What is the main point difference?
The difference between mission control and SOAR, or enterprise security and SOAR, or enterprise security and mission control, is that you give the analyst the opportunity to work in one interface. This is point number one. He has basically the event management in mission control. He has the part of case management in mission control. He has automation, threat intel, and in the future other stuff in one interface. Under this, the SOAR is still a standalone functionality and also technology, but the case management in our SOAR tool, and those guys that are honest to themselves know that this is not that beautiful. It's working very well in mission control, and you can basically collect everything into one in one place. The automation part itself, under the hood, is still a SOAR. And if you use the workbook in SOAR, it's called a mission control response plan. And you can do the same, what we just showed to you, also in mission control in the back end using the SOAR tool. It will help the analyst to have, for example, for phase number one, enriching information. It will be totally automated. For him, for the analyst, it's seamless. He doesn't see the difference. But for the person who creates the SOP and builds the use case, it's much easier to do it this way, instead of building a big playbook and putting everything together and so on. So this is maybe a small explanation for this. Thank you. Any other questions?
So when you're given that SOP number, does that mean that the correlation search that you're creating, you're making your correlation search your content, and then that's getting a number which then you can correlate over to the SOP of how to handle that alert? And if that's the case, that makes sense on one-to-one, but when RBA gets involved, I'm curious if that's been considered or how that would work. Because like RBA, you're just, risk score is this high, you have to look at the detections to see what the actual behavior was. So I'm curious if it would work in that scenario.
Yeah, so yes, well, we do a correlation search and map it one-to-one to the SOP. And to be honest, we basically just started using risk-based alerting. We're just in an early phase. We have considered this, and at this point in time for us, it's clear this will not work with RBA. Yeah, what we've been thinking of is, if you're SIM compliant, so let's go a little bit away from that and go to SIM. If you're SIM compliant, you should already have normalized fields in your alerts, and that might also help you, because you already have the playbook that does everything, right? Maybe just execute everything. It's a bit much, but API limits, you can exclude some stuff and only do the interesting thing or save your file hashes and the results from VirusTotal. But yeah, like this, it will need expanding to work with RBA, let's say, like this. Yeah.
I think there was another question, or did I? Okay. Thank you very much for coming to our presentation. Have a great day. See you. Thank you.
Thank you.